Good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are in the world. Thanks for being here. My name is Nim. Thank you for joining us. As you're coming in, please go ahead and just drop in the chat favorite ice cream and where you're from. My name is Nim. I'm hailing from Berkeley, California. And my favorite ice cream is the esteemed Ben & Jerry's Chunky Monkey. Okay, bar chart race, let's get to it. First things first, if you have not already downloaded the code and the slide, please go ahead and drop this link in your browser, bit.ly/KDP_race. Make sure that you've got capitals where there's capitals. And then you can go ahead and you'll be able to download the PDF and the slide deck and any other bits and bytes that you need. Second, if you have not already signed up for a developer account, now's the time. Get to it. There will be a point in our time together tonight where we will turn things over to you to build. And if you don't have access to Kintone, you will only be able to observe at that point. Now, I want to put the power in your hands. I want to make sure that you guys have the ability to just like get down and dirty with building stuff. So please make sure you sign up for a developer account. And please sign up for a Kintone subdomain as well. You'll need both of those things in order to follow along with us on your computer and participate. So click on the link with the, so if you clicked on the link to download the code, you'll be taken to a GitHub gist page. Make sure that you download the zip over here, and you can scroll down to see the other files. This will give you everything that you need. For your developer account, this is the link to follow for the developer account, bit.ly/signup. Make sure you do not use Safari. Make sure you accept cookies and you use Chrome and Firefox. This way you won't run into any issues. And finally, create a Kintone subdomain. When you follow this link, you'll have the opportunity to put in your name, your email, and your own Kintone subdomain. Just name it whatever you want. Just make sure you use lowercase numbers or hyphens. For the person who's getting an error message, that you put your error in exactly the right place, and we're going to have Will or Genji drop that information. And folks, any questions? You're doing a great job so far. Go ahead and drop them in the chat. This is what we're going to make today. This is a this is called a bar chart race. And that's why we call this today's segment, No Server Data Visualization, Build a Bar Chart Race Project. So who's this for? Well, if you are a front-end developer and you want to spend less time setting up your back-end infrastructure, you want to focus on your UI or UX, this was a workshop that's perfect for you. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. So I am Kintone's technical evangelist. So what that means is I share with people what's possible with our platform. And one of the things that I really love doing is empowering folks like you to code better and solve technical problems more effectively. And oftentimes with our no-code, low-code solution. A little bit about me. I started my entrance into this industry through a coding bootcamp called Hack Reactor in San Francisco. I was hired on board to Kintone as a sales engineer. And within 2 years, I was promoted to the lead sales engineer. Then I became the sales engineering manager, which I did for a year before I moved into this role. The reason why I share about this is that oftentimes folks who come on this workshop who join us from around the world, they are learning how to code, and that might be you. You might be a student right now thinking about what your possible career options are in tech. And one obvious one is software engineer, but the less obvious ones are sales engineer, sales engineering manager, and technical evangelist. I want to make myself available if you have any questions about these alternative, what we'll call quote unquote alternative careers inside of a tech career. I'm certainly happy to make myself available to be a resource and give you some color on that. And just really briefly, you might be wondering, what is a sales engineer? Well, if you want to buy software and you send someone over there an email, or you call them up and you say, hey, I've got some questions about your software. the person on the other end of the line who will pick up, they're probably some kind of a salesperson. They might ask you some questions, but then if you go into more detail, or if you have particularly nuanced requirements, they'll say something like, hey, those are really good questions. I don't have the answer to those, but let me bring my engineer on the line. Let me bring our resident technical expert on the line, and they'll be able to answer some of those questions. So that's a sales engineer. They're the folks that help the sales team answer some of those tougher engineering related questions. So that's a sales engineer. And again, I encourage you to use me as a resource if you have any questions about careers in tech. Today's agenda, we're going to be covering 4 things today. There we go, 4. Thanks, Cam. First, we're going to get the big picture. Why are we talking about data visualization? What does that have to do with Kintone, and why, and how does this all come together? Then we'll break down, okay, how do we create a Kintone app? We will display amCharts on Kintone. amCharts is the data visualization library that we'll be using. And then we'll talk about calling REST APIs from Kintone. So soup to nuts, what we're doing is we're talking about why what we're doing is important. We're then introducing you to a tool that's going to be able to do your data visualization. We're going to then introduce the library to actually do the data visualization. And then we're going to talk about how to pipe in data from elsewhere so that you can present it in a pretty way. Let's talk about the big picture. And the big picture starts by talking about data analytics, which is really where this topic of data visualization lies, right? So if you want to do data analytics, you pretty much are guaranteed to be prioritizing 3 things. 1, making the data look pretty. 2, making the data easy to understand. And 3, generating actionable insight, ideally, and especially in a business context where what you're showing to people is intended to give them some color that they can use that'll inform their decisions. This is like table stakes for traditional data analytics. This is what data analytics, that's what they do, what data analysts do. But one of the things that we assert is missing is being able to share those insights effectively. Here's what I mean, okay? So you might be so used to having your documents be in different places. Let's say Word or PowerPoint, Excel, you've got files in Dropbox or Google Drive or Google Sheets, or maybe you're using an Access database. There's fragmentation that occurs around your data. Your data is in a bunch of different places and you're not sure where, right? That makes sense. In fact, it makes so much sense that that's what happens that it's hard to even imagine that it could be some other way. We're just so used to, yeah, I've got a bunch of stuff and it's in a bunch of places. The same thing happens on the communication side, right? So I've got my data that's fragmented. I also have my communications that are fragmented too. I've got emails, I've got Slack, I've got text message, Facebook Messenger, Google Calendars, Zoom chat. There's dozens of channels, easily a dozen channels, if not more, where you might be having conversations with people and perhaps even conversations about that fragmented data, but those conversations are fragmented as well. It gets a little nuts over here. You've got these data silos where information is not being shared effectively, and then the communication is scattered, so it's unclear where you need to go to get what you're looking for. Again, this is stuff we're used to. There's nothing surprising about this. In fact, if you're looking at this slide and you're like, yeah, of course, like that's how the way things are, I say, yes, that's exactly the point. But what we do at Kintone is we solve that problem. So we put the data and the conversations about the data all in one place on our platform. And that's what makes Kintone special, especially in a data analytics context. So Kintone is a no-code, low-code platform. It allows teams to easily share and collaborate on their data efficiently. So let me give you an example of a sample page in Kintone, one that you will see soon yourself when we begin to play inside of it and create some apps. Okay, so this is a sample page in Kintone, and what you'll notice is on the left-hand side we have what you might look and see is like a record, like a format of a record. I'm gonna in a database, right, or in a table. We've got oops. We've got various different fields over here. Those fields are populated with information. We even have a table in this record. And then on the right-hand side, we've got what you can notice over here are like conversations that tag people that talk about this record. So the conversation and the data are living in the same place, and that takes away friction. It makes it easier to make decisions, to coordinate. And a lot of that sort of day-to-day, man, where did I find that thing? Where did I put this? Like that disappears. That ends up being a big deal operationally for folks who are, especially folks who are doing who are engaged in the same workflows, the same processes day in and day out. So actually, Kintone supports workflows too. You can move a record through a workflow, passing it off to the right person at the right time so that they can see the right info and they'll need the right information. And all of that happens on top of what we call apps. An app, you can imagine, is like a table in a spreadsheet, or a spreadsheet in a workbook, or a table in a database. And we store records in apps. Apps are the places where we go to track things and then show and then visualize actionable insight on it. What's really powerful about Kintone as a tool is that apps are really easy to make. So if you're already really tech savvy, let's say you're already a highly accomplished software engineer, you can build an app extremely quickly in a way that allows you to give other people what they need and then quickly so that you can focus on more important problems. Let's say, like as a software engineer, you might have, or as an IT director, you might have like tier 1, tier 2 issues that require your full and consistent attention. You can offload some of those tier 3 and tier 4 issues to Kintone so that frees up your time. If you are not tech savvy, let's say you're like allergic to technology. First of all, if you're on this call and you're allergic to technology, kudos to you. It's very courageous of you to be here tonight. Really, really good for you. And if you are allergic to technology, or you have been in the past, apps allow you to do things that you would have otherwise not been able to do or been too scared of doing. We've made the experience of building the tech stuff that you need to track data, we've made it easy and accessible. And that's a really big deal. Now, we do that by dragging and dropping fields onto a canvas. And then what's important for you coders or data analysts on this webinar who are open to coding is that you can customize these apps extensively with client-side JavaScript. That's JavaScript that's run in your own browser. Your browser executes the code on your machine. Okay, so what's neat about that is, again, if you are allergic to technology or you're not particularly inclined or not tech savvy, you can create what you need. If you're a developer, you can enhance apps with JavaScript. And all of this together, what does all this have to do with data analytics? Well, all of this together fulfills the promise of data analytics in the first place, right? You get meaningful insights about the data that become operationalized quickly. So being able to not just make things look pretty, not just being able to make the data easy to understand, not just being able to generate the actionable insights, but to actually be able to share those insights effectively in an organization, which was the whole damn point in the first place. So this is what all of this has to do with data analytics, and that's why big picture, we talk about Kintone in a data analytics context because of the way that we solve this particular aspect of the problem that we believe doesn't get solved very well. Okay, now as a developer, what does all of this mean to you? How can you, what could you do with this that's valuable to you? Well, a few things. As a developer, you could build a Kintone environment that operates as like a command center, where you push data into or out of Kintone in a way where it becomes like your collaboration layer sitting on top of your other tools, and that it's the primary place where people engage with their work. and then a whole bunch of stuff happens behind the scenes. So you can build those pipes and integrate with third-party web applications to exchange that data. You can also make Kintone, you have a lot of flexibility in uploading CSS and JavaScript to create a custom look and feel. As far as enhancements go, you can also extend the functionality of your apps by building what we call customizations. It's exactly what it sounds like. They're uploaded client-side JavaScript code. Well, I guess that isn't what it sounds like. It's a customization. And then to build and share extensions. So these are, you can imagine them as packages. You create some JavaScript, you put like a settings configuration page up, and then you wrap that in a zip file, and you can share that and more easily across different subdomains. What enables you to do all of this inside of Kintone is you've got JavaScript. We've got an open API available that is both a JavaScript API and a REST API. We make API tokens available so that you can you can authorize the right programmatic interfaces. You can give them the right level of authorization. We've got webhooks as well, so you could kick off some behavior on some third-party tool out there based on events that happen inside of Kintone. Extensions, which we also call plugins, and then as I mentioned, JavaScript customization, CSS and HTML customizations, and precise permission control. So all that together could get you something like this. On the left-hand side, you've got a different kind of graph, different kind of data visualization than the one that we're using today. It's called a bubble cloud. And on the right-hand side, this is a super cool customization that my man Will did that is playing Space Invaders inside of Kintone. And we put this over here to give you a sense of really like anything is possible in this tool. You've got a ton of room and a really big canvas to play with. Okay, so if you're a developer and you're still at the part of your career where you are learning, which if you're a developer, that'll be always ostensibly. But if there's a particular aspect that you're focusing on right now that Kintone could be helpful for, it could be learning new JavaScript tricks, contributing to tech blogs, positioning yourself as a thought leader in that community and sharing your projects as well. If you are looking for opportunities to create revenue, and where this could be helpful for you would be to create and sell Kintone extensions, to consult with firms on achieving business goals and then build stuff up with Kintone very quickly to get them what they need. And then also to develop Kintone customizations for customers. This is with the kind of the client-side JavaScript that we're talking about. Okay. So what does all of this have to do with building projects with no servers? Well, we talked about how Kintone is a low-code, no-code tool. You can use it to have it basically act as your server running your database. So you don't need to spin anything up. It lets you create the databases with a GUI already there, and it allows you to concentrate on the front-end work or perhaps the more important work. So this, folks, this is the big picture. This is why we are here today. This is what we hope you understand about like what our tool is and why you'd want to use it and how it would work in a data analytics context, and ultimately then what kind of practice you could get or what opportunities are available to you out of the software that we make available called Kintone. And let's get our hands dirty. We're going to talk about creating a Kintone app. Now, again, remember, a Kintone app, you can imagine it as a table in a database or a spreadsheet in a workbook. And there are all sorts of different apps that you could create. You could create an expense reporting app. You could create an app to track board games. You can create an app to track what people are eating for lunch. Lots of options. Anything that you would want to track. Many, many, many things that you want to track. You can turn into apps. So let's talk about how to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through the steps to build it, and then I'll turn it over to you. I'll give you some time to build the app as an exercise. Again, this is your alert. If you have not yet signed up for a Kintone developer account or created a Kintone subdomain, now's the time to do that. And if you are having trouble with that, that's okay. Go ahead and reach out to Genji in parentheses Kintone in the chat Send Genji a private message. Genji, can you go ahead and wave again? There you are. Genji's your man. He'll take care of you. He'll sort you out. If you've already registered, but you're waiting for an email that's not there, this is the email you're looking for. It says, welcome to Kintone, one more step too, and check your spam. Sometimes it lands in there. Very, very rarely, but that is still sometimes. And then once you do that, you'll enter into your subdomain.com. Your underscore subdomain is whatever you typed in over here. You'll set your initial password. And then the first screen that you see when you log in will be either administration or the Kintone button. You're going to click on the Kintone button. And here we are. Welcome to Kintone. So front and center, what you see is our portal. This would typically be like this. You can imagine this as like a canvas where folks would put like what's important front and center to all of the people who are using this tool. What we want to do is we want to create an app. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into that apps segment on the right-hand side, this zone over here, and there's a plus sign. You'll click on that plus sign. And once you do, you'll be taken to what's called the Kintone Marketplace, but you can better understand as a library. This is a collection of templates that we make available for folks that want to duplicate apps quickly. You'll also notice that you can create apps from CSV or from Excel, in other words, from existing data, or from another template app. We're actually going to create one from scratch, which is what you're going to click over here, create app from scratch. And when we do, we're going to title this app the Board Game DB. You'll see the title up at the top of the left. You'll click on the title and go ahead and type it in, and it'll change Board Game DB. Now, what we're going to start doing on this page, this is our form builder page. So let's start building our form. Let's start building our app. And we're going to do that by dragging a field from the left-hand side of the palette on the left side, all the way to the canvas on the right-hand side. So to do that, you'll click on text first, and you'll drag it from the left-hand side from the palette onto the canvas. And from there, you're gonna hover over it and click on a gear wheel, or hover over a gear wheel on the top right corner of that field. You'll see there's a drop-down menu with the option for settings, which you're going to click settings. And when you do, you'll be taken to the settings page for this text field. What we're going to do is we're going to change the name from text to name, just like that, and then click save, and then you're done. Then we'll create another field. This is a drop-down field. Again, so from the left side of the palette to the right side of the canvas, drag and drop a drop-down field. Say that 3 times fast. Drag and drop a drop-down field. And then you're going to do the same thing. You'll hover over it. There'll be a gear wheel on the top right of the field. You'll hover over that gear wheel and click on settings. And now we're going to change the name of the drop-down field from drop-down to type. And then we're going to change the options from sample 1 and sample 2 to abstract and area control, just like this. Just like this. Now, you might have a question over here, as you're looking at this. Hey, I understand what these options are. These settings over here are pretty self-explanatory. What is this field code down here? And this is important for reference later. This will come up as we go through the code. What you should know about field codes right now is that each of these fields needs a unique identifier. Now we can name these fields the same thing. We could ostensibly have a whole suite of fields that are all named name or all named type. But ultimately on the back end, the software needs some way of differentiating what these fields are. And so we've got these unique field codes that are basically for the back end to talk to and to use to differentiate among the fields. This will be relevant later as we go through the code, and we need specific, we need to be calling out specific fields, and we'll be doing that by referring to their field codes. You can, by the way, you can go ahead and add another option onto the drop-down setting. So you've got abstract and area control and drafting, which you'll click on the plus sign. You'll add drafting over here. And once you do that, once you've got the name and the type, we're going to click on this button called Activate App. This is going to move the app from development into the production environment. And so you'll do that. And here you are. You'll be presented with the with your first app, and it looks pretty empty, exactly like you'd expect. We don't have any data in it. We just created the structure for the data to live in. From here, you'll go to your portal by clicking on that home icon, and then what you'll see is we're back here in the portal. And this board game DB link is now front and center. We've created our new app, and here's where we go to find it. Okay, now what will this look like when we actually have data in it? The app we created, remember, an app is like a table in a database or a spreadsheet in a workbook. So it makes sense that it'll look table-like. That's what we see over here. Here's the list of our data. We've got a plus sign over here that we can use to add more records. We can go into the settings by clicking on this gear wheel. And then if we needed to access the specifics of any record, we click on this blue thumbnail on the left-hand side. All right, folks, I just gave you a lot of information. Now go forth and build your first app if you have not done so already. What you're going to do is you'll create a new app from scratch. You'll create a text field and rename it. You'll create a drop-down field and rename it and also change the options. And then you'll hit Activate App. All right, folks, let's move to the next section. All right, so we got the big picture. We understand why we're here and why we're doing what we're doing. Then we created our first Kintone app so that we can have a structure for our data. The next thing that we're going to do is build a data visualization on our data, and we're going to do that with a tool called amCharts. So amCharts is a programming library for data visualization. It's highly sophisticated and creates some very snazzy looking charts using JavaScript or HTML5 for all sorts of websites and applications. It is fast, it is stylish, and it is responsive. So if you want to check out amCharts at any point and look through all the stuff that you can do, I encourage you to go ahead. It's a pretty cool library. How does this work with Kintone? So typically with a tool like amCharts, with a programming library like this, the way that you would use it on the web would be, okay, you've got your HTML, your website, right? And so what you need to do is you need to hook the JavaScript. You need to create like an element in your HTML that you can hook the JavaScript into, right? Some kind of root element. Then on the JavaScript side, you need to summon your script. You need to define the details of the chart, and then you need to pipe data into that chart from somewhere. You need all of these parts in order for your data visualization to work as expected. Kintone simplifies this. What you can do is you can use Kintone's HTML. In fact, we have a method that's available that in the JavaScript you can hook into specific elements on the Kintone page. Instead of using a script tag, you can use the configuration settings to set those links. So this is something that you can configure instead of code. The data is the data that's on Kintone to begin with. And so then all you really need to use the JavaScript for is just to define the details of the chart. So it simplifies things for you, and it lets you focus on the interesting stuff. Now, what we're going to do next is we're going to create an app from a CSV file, and then we will add JavaScript to the app. That JavaScript is going to use amCharts, and then our expected result will be some very nice looking data visualization for bar charts. So again, there's going to be two parts of this. First, I'm going to go through the steps to build an app, and then we're going to build it together as an exercise. All right, so first things first, creating a new Kintone app from a CSV file. Get this link, bit.ly/KDP_race if you have not done so already. Make sure you grab the file called 01_data.csv. This is going to be the data that we're going to turn into a CSV. And you'll find it wherever it is. Now on the Kintone side, what you're going to do is you're going to create another app. This is your second app in your, assuming this is your first time with us, this will be your second app on your Kintone platform. And you'll be taken to the Kintone marketplace. Now from here, you're going to create from CSV. And to do that, you're going to follow a CSV wizard that has been created to make sure that your CSV meets all of the criteria in order to be imported, in order to have your data be imported effectively. We've handled all of that for you. You've got a nicely scrubbed CSV file. We can just load it up and rock and roll. So we're going to hit continue and then check all. So it's going to check all these boxes. And then we will continue to the upload screen, and we will upload the CSV that you just downloaded moments ago. Once you do that, you'll have a slice of that data be presented to you, and Kintone basically wants you to check and make sure, hey, does this look the way that you're expecting? Does it have everything that you want? It does. So all you're going to do after that, after you scroll down, is you'll click convert. You'll also notice that in between that data slice, there's a place where you can map fields in Kintone, columns in the CSV to fields in Kintone that are about to be created. And they give you a place for you to define those fields. You can leave everything as is. But this is where this field mapping would happen. So that you've done it, you've created your first Kintone app. Sorry, you've created your first Kintone app from a CSV. And from here, we're going to add the amCharts libraries to the app, okay? So if you've taken all those first steps, first, what you'll do is you'll drill down into that 01_data.csv. Well, sorry, now it's an app. You'll find it over here in your portal, okay? And what we're going to do is once you click on that, that link, we're going to go into the settings page, okay? And you'll be taken to the settings page. You'll see there's the form builder. Now this should look very familiar. We just played with this, but we're actually going to choose another tab to do some work with. We're going to choose the app settings tab. In the app settings tab, there's a JavaScript and CSS customization setting that we're going to click on. And it's going to be here where we reference the scripts, okay? So the way that we do that, again, instead of using a script tag inside of a JavaScript, we're doing it here instead. And what it looks like is, instead of using a script tag inside of the HTML, we're going to do it here instead. And the way, and what we're going to do first is we're going to reference the links for these JavaScript files that are hosted elsewhere. They're hosted on the amcharts.com website. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a link, and we're going to do this 3 times. We're going to add 3 links over here, and they must be done in the following order. So what you'll do is you'll add 1 link at a time, and then you'll hit this blue save button that is in line to the link, and you'll do that a few times. Okay, when you're done, you'll have 3 of them listed. Now, all of these 3 resources are what we need in the background in order for our custom JavaScript to work. So we're almost done over here. What we're going to do next is add a custom JavaScript file to the app. This is the file that's going to have our chart details in it. And what we'll do is we'll go back to that bit.ly KDP race if you haven't already, and you're going to download 03_script.js. Go ahead and find it in your on your machine. And then back here in the JavaScript and CSS customization settings, instead of adding a link, you'll add a file. And the file is going to be the one that you put on your machine. Make sure that it is in this order, that that file is last in the order. And then hit save. We're almost done. We're going to redeploy the app. So all we did was we moved, we've saved to development, but we now need to push to production, and we do that by clicking Update App on the top right-hand corner of the screen. And when we're done, we'll get this. All right. At this time, I'm letting you loose. Go ahead, get started. You're going to create a Kintone app from the CSV file. You'll add the JavaScript libraries to the app. There are 3 that are linked. Then you'll upload a custom JavaScript file. Then you will redeploy the Kintone app by clicking on Update App. And then finally, raise your hand on Zoom when you're done. Take it away, folks. All right. So this is the moment you've been waiting for. If you've been wanting to get into the code, you've been sitting around, like, buckle up. Here we go. First, I want to talk about the libraries. Okay, we used some configuration settings to include some libraries into this app. The first 3 were resources that we're getting from amCharts, and we linked to them. That first library is the core library. The second one is the library for creating charts. And the third one, it creates an animation that we're going to use. It allows us to have smooth transitions, and it makes things look prettier. It's that fourth one, the one that you downloaded onto your machine that we're going to open up and check out. So if you haven't done so already, go ahead and spin up your code browser. I'm sorry, your code editor. If you don't have one of choice, may I recommend Visual Studio Code. It's an excellent selection. I feel like I'm serving wine at the table. It's the 1990 vintage Visual Studio Code made by Microsoft. This is a really well-esteemed cultivar. Once you do that, you'll start seeing this. You see the code. So first and foremost, we've got what's called an immediately invoked function expression. So this little function thing over here is set up so that Kintone will read this code and then immediately execute it. It allows us to preserve the scope of our file, so that there's no variables in here that leak into the global scope. What you'll see next is use strict. If you're familiar with coding in JavaScript, you'll know that use strict is something that is like a command that the JavaScript engine reads and knows to interpret the code in a certain way, to not let the code get away with certain things. So let's call them like sloppy behaviors. And then over here, we've got this Kintone.events.on. Now this is where things are starting to get interesting. So we've got this Kintone object, and it's got some way of handling events. Now, if you've done any kind of coding before, you're very likely to have run into some kind of event handling, especially if you're coding a JavaScript for the browser. We need some way of saying, execute this piece of code when X happens or when Y happens. And typically with a browser, it'll be like execute this on page load or execute this when the DOM is loaded. In Kintone, we want our code to be executed under more granular and predictable stages. So we've got events like, when we are on the page that shows us our list of records, or when we've saved a record, or when we've created a record, or when we're editing a record. So those are different kinds of events that our code will kick off on. And what we see in front of us is an event called app.record.index.show, which in English means when we see the list view, when we see the view, the page that has our list of records, then do the following. And so all of the stuff that is going to be inside of this Kintone.events.on handler, this is all do the following when we are in the list view, when we are on that record list page. What do we see next over here? Well, we need to hook the chart into an HTML element. And that's what we're doing over here. We've created a variable called spaceDiv. And we used the method that I had mentioned previously to get a specific element on that's already there on the Kintone page. That element is going to be this yellow area over here. This is where the chart is going to live. This is our header space. So we are going to execute a method called getHeaderSpaceElement. And then we begin to style that space element, giving it the appropriate height and margins and borders and all that stuff. Next, we create the chart instance. This am4 core.use theme, this object comes from amCharts. This comes from one of the libraries that we've loaded. And it's going to use an animated theme. And then we're going to use this create method that is a part of the am4 core object to create our chart. And then we're going to give it some padding. Okay. Now notice in the create method, we've got our target div over here. This is space div. This is the one that we just created. And then we're going to explain what kind of chart we want. We're going to do what's called an XY chart. So from here, just want to be clear that we've got data, right? Remember, we've got data. Now, what does that data look like? If you're looking at Kintone, it looks like these records, right? And we've got year and manufacturer and phone. And the data might also look like, what happens behind the scenes is that Kintone exposes these records as a large JSON object that we can then use in our code. And ultimately, it's going to look like this bar chart, right?
Thank you. The data we got, we stole it from Wikipedia, a really good source. And it's collecting information for the past from 2004 to 2010 about how many units sold of smartphones of companies. And since the numbers are really large, we shorten it down to K per 1,000 and M per million, and most of them are in million units.
Thank you, Genji. So as we take a look at the board, we'll see a K for thousands, we'll see an M for millions, and a B for billions. And what we're doing right now is we're handling those big numbers in a way that is appealing. So for you UI folks out there, this one's for you. We're pouring this out for you. Now what happens? Now we're going to start creating the chart and creating the details of the chart. First, we're going to set up the label. We're positioning the label in a certain place. We are making it a certain size. We're also setting the speed of the race. So this is like every 4 seconds we've created like a what's called a step, which is like a unit of time for the passage of the data as it's getting presented. And then we're creating this category axis. So you'll notice that amCharts, I mean, folks, it's already clear to see that amCharts, you've got a lot of functionality over here. A lot of this configuration is going to be done by modifying these objects. And so just like a note about that is there's an opportunity for you to go through the documentation and to get facile with what all of these different functions do, and what are the parameters that you can, what are the different properties that you can pass in to that object that'll get saved, and then it'll get interpreted in a way that'll change your graphs. We'll then do the x-axis, and so we add a new axis over here. We are setting its minimum and its maximum, and the way that the range is changing. Then we have a piece over here that creates the quote unquote bars in the bar chart race. Okay, so handling the interpolation, handling the color, and what happens when we hover over the bars with our cursor. We'll see a tooltip, and it'll look a certain, it'll have content in a certain way. We're also defining the data fields, so the manufacturer and the value. This is, we're going to ultimately need to match up our data to these properties, so that, we're going to need to match, our data will need to have these properties so that the chart library can read them and then interpret them correctly. So this is the place where we match up the properties in the data set to what the chart is looking for to present. And then there's a label bullet that we create. This creates a moving label on top of the bar. So you'll see that, like, as the bars go up, there's a number with an M or a B or a K that precedes it. That's what we're calling the label bullet. And it's got a particular way that the text gets organized. It's oriented in a particular way. And then over here, there's a configuration setting where we can zoom out of the chart. We've disabled that in order to make it look nicer inside of Kintone. Okay. So you can see there's a lot going on over here. Here's some more. The color of the columns and the starting label. So this one is handling the colors, and we're using the chart.colors color set. We've set the year to 2005, and then we're making sure that is passed into the label as a string. And then we use this play and stop, these play and stop functions in order to handle the flow of the animation. Okay. So the thing that we do over here is we've created this function to handle what happens when we increment the data by a year. So we increment the data by a year, and then what we do is we show only the manufacturers that had phones sold this year. So if there are 14 manufacturers in 2014 and like 3 of them in 2005, we don't want to start with 14. We want to start with 3, and then gradually we'll add more, and we'll add more, and we'll add more. You can see there's a lot of behavior here that's happening. It's happening behind the scenes. It's happening right in front of you. But if you didn't like piece it out, you might take it for granted. There's actually a lot going on under the hood here. And this is cool because it gives you plenty of opportunity to play around and see what happens. You know, can I change this? Will it break? How do I make it not break? And if and another thing that we do with the next year functions, we'll end up redrawing the bars. As more manufacturers enter the field, as we go from 3 to 14 manufacturers, the bars, like the height of the bars gets smaller in order to make sure that everything fits in the same space. So that also needs to get handled, and it does over here. And then also the chart will get resorted in descending order based on the new data. Okay, so in this part of the code, we need to get the records that Kintone that we've stashed inside of Kintone. And we do that by making a client-side call to the Kintone API. We do that over here. When we structure the call in a certain way, we have the body of the API request, and it's over here. A request to the Kintone API for records needs an app and a query. And think about this intuitively, okay, right? There I am. I want to talk to a database. I call up the database on the phone. The database says, what do you need? Give me an address and tell me what you want. So the address is the app. The address is the app ID. It's the unique ID of each app. So you're telling Kintone, I want data from that app, that specific app over there, number one. Also known to, or app number two, also known to us as 01_data. And I'm looking for this particular thing. In other words, I'm looking for the query condition. Okay. Now this query condition method is going to give us whatever filter we've already been using on that record list page. Okay, so again, we want to get records on the back end. We want to make sure we're getting them from the same place. We want to make sure that the ones that we are selecting match the ones that we're seeing in front of us visually on the page. That's what's going on over here. Okay, and once all that happens, start the animation, which is this line over here. Okay. So we've got the data, and remember, we now need to format the data in a way that amCharts is expecting. Remember, amCharts is expecting a manufacturer and a value. And so we need whatever we're reading to also have a manufacturer and a value for each piece of data so that we can feed it into amCharts and amCharts will eat it and do something with it. Okay, that's what's going on over here. This is a method. This is a function that turns the received data into an object that amCharts can consume. And so what you see is we've got this, and you can see it over here. We've got this object that's got a manufacturer, and we've got value, and we are picking off items from our from the response of our API call. We've got an API call response. So in other words, we asked Kintone for records. Kintone gave us records. Now we need to pick off the slices that are important to us and put them in an object. So we're going to take data from a field called drop_down and and values from a field called number_0. Now, where did this come from? Do you remember about an hour or so ago when we talked about how Kintone has field codes? Those field codes are unique identifiers, and we use them on the back end. Kintone uses them on the back end. This is where they show up. So that drop down over here, that number_0, these are the field codes that are associated with a particular app. And for each record, get the value of dropdown, get the value of the number, and then associate the dropdown value with manufacturer, associate the number value with value, and ultimately turn this into a list of records, okay, like an array, and then take that array and turn it into JSON, into a JSON object, which we will then feed into amCharts, and amCharts will consume, which is what this looks like. Remember, I said we prompted Kintone for information. Give us all of the records that are filtered by our query condition. In other words, show us all of your data that meets these conditions. And then it gave us this information over here. This is what the response was from Kintone. we needed to turn this part into this part, which is what we just did in the last function. But what if we had third-party tools, that we were third-party APIs that we wanted to pipe data from, right? Wouldn't it be cool if we could have data come to us from these public APIs and be able to display them as a as a snazzy data visualization? Yes, it would be cool. So here we are. We're going to talk about that. Now, there's a bit of a catch over here. Typically, when you are making REST API calls, in other words, when one computer talks to another on the internet, right? It typically happens like this. You go to a website and you ask that website, you make a request on that website. That website's server makes the request on your behalf to another server. And then that other server talks to yours before your server comes to your browser. Okay, it's like a restaurant. You don't go to the back of the house. You don't go to the kitchen. The server handles all that for you and then presents you what you want. But because we're executing client-side JavaScript in Kintone, things get a little bit more nuanced. Because under normal conditions, under many conditions, third-party servers won't accept your requests if they're made directly from your machine. In other words, if I'm on google.com, I cannot make a request to a website xkcd.com. Typically, I would need Google to handle that request for me. Because I'm trying to go straight, I'm on website A and trying to talk to website B. Instead of letting website A handle the connection to and from website B, I run into something called a cross-origin resource sharing issue, a CORS error, cross-origin resource sharing. It's exactly what it sounds like. I'm at one origin, I'm going to another origin and trying to share a resource. It's a security issue. You don't want like malicious code to be executed on your browser where you think you're at google.com, but secretly you're at like, give me your social security number, hahaha.com, right? So this is typically locked down. Well, we need a way while we're on Kintone and doing stuff that we're expecting to do and that we want to do. We're on Kintone.com, but we want to talk to some website over there. How do we do that? Well, we do that with something called a proxy server, okay? A proxy server is, a proxy server is like a server that sits in between you and where you want to go and does stuff on your behalf. So what we do with Kintone exposes a method called Kintone.proxy, which you can use in JavaScript and it will make a call on your behalf. Okay, so what we're looking at is the method Kintone.proxy. So instead of making a call directly from our code, we're going to use Kintone.proxy to make that call. And other than that, it's the same. Okay? The advantage of this is that we will be able to reach out to these third-party websites like xkcd.com while we're on Kintone without running into any issues. Let me show you an example over here. What you see on the left-hand side is our code. Okay? Here's my URL. I want to get something from xkcd.com. And what I'm seeing over here is, okay, when I go on the record list page, which is the page that I'm on over here, right? I want you to make a GET call to this URL. When you do, if it's successful, please show the response as an image in this window that has these dimensions. And we see that it's successful. This only works because we used Kintone.proxy to make this call for us. If we did not do that, we would we would run into a cross-origin resource sharing issue. The benefits of this are you can use Kintone.proxy on all browsers that Kintone's compatible with, like Internet Explorer. This Kintone proxy method is going to return a promise object. If you're not familiar with promise objects, that's cool. We're actually going to do a whole webinar on promises shortly, so stay tuned, and we'll give you the information if we've nailed it down at that point. Otherwise, we'll just need to stay tuned some more. And then, again, those REST API calls can be made from the browser without being blocked by these CORS errors, the cross-origin resource sharing. So let's wrap. What did we do today? We got the big picture. What is Kintone? Why is it important to you? Why is it important from a data analytics perspective? How can you use it if you're a coder or if you're just learning? Why, like, what is the relevancy to you? Then we built a Kintone app. We showed you how you can start building databases with no code and how you can begin to customize those databases with JavaScript. And you created your first app. Then you created your second app when we displayed the amCharts on Kintone. We imported data from a CSV. We connected that app to some scripts. 3 of them were links, and a 4th one was the one that we uploaded. And we then cracked open that custom JavaScript file and went line by line at a high level to understand what's going on over here. Essentially, this is the chart, this is how it's behaving, this is how it's formatted, this is how the animation works, and this is how we take information from Kintone and turn it into data that the graph can consume. And then finally, we talked about calling REST APIs from Kintone. So now that we have a platform that we can use a snazzy data visualization library for, how do we bring data into it from third parties that are not CSV files? That's what the purpose of talking about REST APIs are, the purpose is over here. Because we want to be able to pull from various different resources and display them. And we talked about some of the challenges of doing that on a platform like Kintone, where you don't have direct control over the server, where you're running client-side code. You have to find some way of avoiding CORS errors, and the way that you do that is by using the Kintone proxy method. So why would you want to use Kintone for your projects? Well, again, there's no need to set up or maintain a server. Your databases can be easily created with the GUI. The front-end JavaScript can utilize the database data, and then you can call REST APIs from the front end. Okay, so sounds cool. What's next? Certainly, if you want to check out more visualization projects, amCharts got a ton of great demos. Definitely worth trying out. Hey, what other libraries can I connect over here? How can I reuse this code? You may also be interested in some of these APIs and starting to pipe APIs into Kintone and seeing how you can present them in a snazzy way. If you want to do that, here's a list of APIs that we've pointed out to you as a resource. This is a cool list over here. If you want to use Kintone as a backend and retrieve data via Kintone's REST API. So this is a neat thing if you've got like some projects elsewhere and you don't want to deal with like the rigmarole of building up a database. You just create a Kintone app real quick and you use the Kintone API to dial in and set up being authorized appropriately. So we've got a great little project over here where you can deploy a REST API that calls a Node.js app to Heroku. Now, if you're stuck, not a problem. We've got resources for you as well. There's a Kintone developer community forum. There's also Stack Overflow where we check questions and answer them over there and over there. You should all be members of the Kintone developer community at this point, since you've created a developer license account.
All right, so I want to thank some of our community partners, HackBuddy by JavaScript LA and Flatiron School. They participated with or partnered with us, and they helped share our event. And I want to say join our future workshops. We do have some coming up in January, February. I did also post a link to our January 28th event in the chat section. It's the Eventbrite for that, for the promises meetup that Nim was talking about. So definitely join us for that. With that bit.ly right there, KDP_events. And lastly, we wanted to thank you so much for participating at this workshop.
So on behalf of Genji and Will, Christine and Zach, and the rest of our team over here, we just say like thank you for being with us. We don't take it for granted. We wish you all a really wonderful holiday season. We look forward to having you join us in 2021 in the new year. And all the best, everybody.